has been around for 50 years. Not a single hospital, not a single school, not a single bank, not a single supermarket, not a single distribution company. How can we call hip hop a blessing to the Black community when that type of money being made off of our culture and the community doesn't benefit from it at all? So you come to the community and give out a few turkeys. You come to the community and give out a few pair of sneakers. You come to the community and you throw a couple parties. And in exchange for some damn turkeys and chickens and some sneakers, you push death and destruction on our children for a living. And we're supposed to be okay with that because you dropped off some clothes and some turkeys. It's not acceptable until hip hop begins to be a blessing for the Black community. Hip hop is an agent of white supremacy. And then the rapper will say, well, we didn't invent violence. You're right. You didn't invent violence. There was gang banging before hip hop. Okay. There was drug dealing before hip hop. There was black on black crime before hip hop. But let me tell you where hip hop is guilty. Hip hop glamorized it. Hip hop glorified it. Hip hop put a spotlight on negative aspects of Black culture.
Welcome back. Hottest show in the galaxy. It's the Karen Hunter Show. We are here. It is Tech Tuesday. Kevin Powell is my partner in power for most of the day. He, of course, is the Grammy-nominated, I was going to say winner, Freudian, Grocery Shopping with My Mother, Essential Writings and Conversations, also the album, the book, the album, 16 books in. Is this fair? I played it because let me just couch it this way. We hear things and we find shreds of truth, and then we take it and we run with it without careful examination. Things that feel good to our ears. There's a scripture about the itchy little ears. Things that feel good may not actually be accurate, right? Whether we're talking about politics, the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. That feels good, right? That feels good until you actually drill into the facts and examine it, and you find out they're not the same party, this iteration of it. Now, that said, parties wax and wane, and we can have that conversation too, but it requires a little bit more. Kevin, how did this feel when you heard this, what I just played?
We have a saying in the activist community that I come out of, that I was raised in, that I'm still very much a part of. Always find out where people came from, and is there honesty in their background. I stopped calling people out by name long ago. Karen Hunter, you have the right to do that. Other folks can do that. I'm just going to talk about types of people for a second, if I may, as I listen to Dr. Umar Johnson. We're going to assume that he actually really is a doctor, that he actually earned this doctor. He's not a hip hop person. You know what I mean? Because anyone who really is of the hip hop community and hip hop culture, I grew up a b-boy, a graffiti writer. I was a staff member at Vibe magazine. I was a hip hop journalist. I curated the first exhibit on hip hop in this country. I just edited a special issue of African Voices, a Black woman-led publication out of Brooklyn, 63 writers writing about hip hop at 50. When you use people, you can tell people who don't know anything about hip hop because they just use the word hip hop. There's hip hop culture, and then there's hip hop the industry. There's two different things that we're talking about. But if you don't know the difference, you just use the word hip hop as a sweeping term for everything. And so that's number one. Number two, you could tell someone doesn't know anything about hip hop because they keep focusing on the rappers. I'm like, hip hop is not just about a rapper. Rapping is one thing, but what hip hop is a cultural movement. You know that I wrote an article a couple months ago that people can look up on political.com where I talk about my problems as a lifelong hip hop head with hip hop industry versus hip hop, the culture. I'm clear to make that distinction, but also clear what hip hop has done and the opportunities it's created. And I think, it's about, if you notice in those remarks that just were played, there's no criticism of the system that feeds all of this. The criticism is only at Black people, people of color who are quote unquote making hip hop. anytime I hear someone just criticizing the victims of oppression and has nothing to say about the victimizers of oppression, the beneficiaries of the oppression, I'm like, who's this person really? Frantz Fanon said in Wretched the Earth, beware of the dynamic speaker. Anyone can speak well, as my mama would say, and then from South Carolina, you can titillate people. We got a whole history of preachers doing that. But at the end of the day, what are you actually saying? It's actually a lie to say that there's no hospitals, distribution centers, there's no nothing that has been created in these 50 years by hip hop inspired people. We literally have 4 generations of people now who have been inspired by hip hop. Generation X, baby boomers, people who are way past 60. You have people who are millennials and Generation Z. You even have Generation Alpha, kids who are 10, 11 years old. You know what? Latasha Brown in Atlanta, Georgia, Black Voters Matter. You just had Brother Raxon on here from Crimson Pack, who's doing his thing with Political Action Committee. You have people like Rukia Lumumba and Cassio Batiste in Jackson, Mississippi. You have people like Davy D, Lasana Hotep in the Bay Area. I could name you literally 100 people, Karen Hunter, all around the country. Why? Because I've been to all 50 states who are doing amazing work. Jessica Care Moore, shout out to Detroit. Brandon Scott, the mayor of Baltimore. Ras Barack, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Chokwe Lumumba, the mayor of
Jasiri X in
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm saying, my brother Mark Byers has something called Protect the Culture, a new label and distribution base. And so LeBron James, he's invested in Akron, Ohio. He's of the hip hop era. We can look at a whole bunch of people. The only challenge, the issue for me, going back to what we were talking about earlier in the other segment, is that Black folks have not been coordinated. We've not been connected, which is what you've been doing, Karen Hunter, which is how do we connect the dots of all these things that are happening so we can actually have some movement and stop chasing the fame, stop chasing the microphone, stop chasing the eyeballs on our sound bites on Instagram, on the gram, etc. Stop saying things that you think are going to get attention. And what are you actually doing in terms of the work to bring this together? Because anyone can complain about what's not happening, but a real leader says, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm building, not just putting money, links out there for people to donate to something that we never even see manifested ever.
Ooh, Kevin Powell, it's here. Yes, all of that. I played it because there was a period in my life when this would have been fodder for a column. This would have been something I could have easily leaned into because on its face, on its surface, it feels very right. Where are our... And I often ask this question too, in terms of system buildings. When I look at Amazon and I look at, Apple, I'm asking this question on Tech Tuesday. What would it take for us to build the next Twitter or the next Apple or the next? What does that even look like? Look, can we have this conversation today? Because I want to deconstruct power in the sense that allows us to then construct the world that we want to live in. Kevin Powell sticking around. We're talking hip hop. He also is a hip hop activist. He's been in them trenches, which is why I played the clip I played from Umar Johnson, because I feel like, as much as we criticize, we don't criticize with a basic knowledge and understanding. So I appreciate what you had to say before we went to break. You have more to say.
I just want to keep shouting out names of people. Patrick Oliver, Dallas, Texas, doing amazing work with young people in literacy. I mean, there's a long list of folks. And so I just think it's a matter of us just connecting the dots, Karen. And, and I agree with you. Maybe it's something that we take offline. It doesn't have to be publicized. But I think that, we do need to have a plan of action for, if we're talking about specifically Black people in America, there needs to be a plan of action, a holistic plan of action. People always ask me, what does that mean? Spiritual, political, cultural, financial empowerment, mental health, physical health. I think it has to be those 6 things. I think about this all the time. Like, what do we need to do? How do we empower ourselves? How do we move this needle? And I just think that we need to also acknowledge the folks that are doing work. I'm not going to say we don't have to criticize. We should criticize and push and challenge. I believe in doing that, but I practice what I call, Karen Hunter, the 3 C's. First, what is the context of why we are where we are? That's the first C. The second one is, do we have compassion for our own people? Is there love in the spirit of Baldwin and Dr. King and people like that? Then challenge. When people talk about you, Karen, all the time, and they hear the love. Sometimes when I hear people speaking, we don't have to say the names of them. Like, they don't love themselves, nor do they love Black people. However, they figured out that they can make a fast buck speaking about and for Black people, but they don't actually love or even like Black people. How about that? You know what I mean? And so I just think about That stuff, and that's and also I need to say this as a cultural person, as a music person, we didn't expect the blues or spirituals or rock and roll or soul music to be our salvation. Something is very twisted here, where we're expecting entertainers, artists, all of a sudden to be the leaders of our communities. That's because of the celebrity industrial complex that has been perpetuated in the dumbing down of America over the last 25, 30 years or so, where we're pushing athletes and entertainers, rappers, et cetera, in front as if they're the ones who have the solutions, even if folks don't read books, have not done any kind of the critical work that you've done, that I've done, et cetera. And I'm saying, let's start putting up the Patrick Olivers of the world. Let's start putting up the Latasha Browns of the world, the Jessica Care Moores of the world, these folks who are actually in the community doing work on a daily basis, often thankless work. Let's say those names. And if someone calls himself a scholar, intellectual, I'm like, well, where's your books, yo? Where are your ideas? Where's your new thinking about what's happening here? Where's your school at if you call yourself a scholar? What are you actually building and creating? It shouldn't just be people like you and Dr. Carr doing this. Why aren't there multiple Nubias? But a lot of people are just talking as opposed to doing what you're doing, Karen Hunter and Dr. Carr and others you work with, which is let's actually build what we think we should see. That's real leadership to me.
Well, yes, and I don't even put myself in that category. Nubia was birthed out of necessity, during the pandemic, and even in that, I sit in as a student of Dr. Carr, who's been teaching 30 years, 20 plus at in Africana framing, right? I'm learning right along with everybody else. And I'm realizing, it is informing the way that I think in the future, which is what learning should do, right? It should shift and change some of the ways in which you see the world. When you know better, you should do better. But yeah, I don't even put myself in that category as somebody that is doing that kind of work of the people that you listed. But I appreciate that. I love these 3 C's. I wrote them down: context, compassion, and then you challenge.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one who loves things is the one